Hello, mentors. Welcome to our podcast series, Mentorships in Education, brought to you by Just Education at justeducationfirst.com. I am your host, Judith Epstein. I am very excited about the wide range of experts who have volunteered to give up their time and expertise. They will share their innovative ideas, their exciting perspectives, their rich resources, and their research with us. Please continue to delve into these topics on their websites and with your legal counsel, healthcare provider, and education professional. Our guests have information that will be relevant to mentors supporting struggling students, parents, teachers, administrators, legal support, and health professionals. We will address all levels of education with issues that affect academic performance. Our goal is to open discussions and introduce a variety of approaches to those searching for information in a free venue. So mentors, let me introduce our guest for today.
Hello, mentors. Welcome to our podcast, Mentorships in Education. We're brought to you by Just Education at justeducationfirst.com. I want to thank many of you who have been so graciously sending in suggestions for guests and commenting on different topics that you would like to hear. I hope you will continue to do that. You can go to the website and communicate with me there through our email address, and you can find our episodes on YouTube or any of the other social media. So I hope you'll look for us in any of those venues. I am very excited today. This is going to be a really fun discussion for me. We're usually very serious, discussing some very intellectual topics, but today we're going to have some fun. We've all been through some difficult times, and as parents and teachers, we've been struggling to try and find ways to keep our kids interested in what they need to study and enrich their learning in as many ways as we can, make each day a little more interesting and encompassing as many of our students as we can. But our guest today uses music for this, and he engages kids in kinesthetic ways, visual ways. He helps develop their social skills, and I'm very, very excited to introduce to you Ryan Judd. Thank you so much for being with us today, Ryan.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Appreciate all the time you've been giving in preparation for this, and also your valuable time now. I want to talk a little bit about Ryan before we get started, and so that our listeners will know more about who you are. Ryan has a master's degree in psychology and music therapy and one of the top contemplative educational schools in the country. He is a board-certified music therapist, director of the Rhythm Tree, LLC, and has been specializing in helping people with special needs for more than 20 years. The results he's achieved from integrating music and therapy are powerful, and his work has been featured on ABC World News Tonight and other national news outlets. Ryan's mission is to elevate individuals with special needs to new heights developmentally, emotionally, and expressively. His passion extends beyond the face-to-face work that he does, and he has created a product line of DVDs and CDs and video courses to help those in the special needs community. And we're going to have links to all of that for you right on the podcast. In addition, he is a Billboard Top 10 recording artist and composes instrumental guitar music for anxiety and stress reduction. His unique background as a music therapist and award-winning fingerstyle guitarist has given him the tools to help people through the power of music. Some terms there I'm not familiar with. I have to ask you, what is a fingerstyle guitarist?
Yeah. So it's kind of like playing a guitar as a classical guitarist would play. So instead of using a pick and holding a pick to strum the strings, you use the fingers of your right hand to pluck the strings. And so you can just make really rich, dynamic music with fingerstyle.
That is very interesting. It's a term I've never heard before. Thank you. So, Ryan, when I had the pleasure of speaking with you a while ago, you described to me your journey toward becoming a certified licensed musical therapist, and you mentioned kind of an aha moment that was a transitional point for you. Maybe you'd like to start and share some of your experiences that have led you in this direction, if you wouldn't mind doing that.
Gosh, I feel like it really started back in high school. And, being a guy growing up in the US, we weren't really nurtured and raised in a way in general to be emotionally expressive. And so I remember when I was struggling with some things in high school, the only way that I could actually tap into my heart and emote and to cry was with this somber instrumental kind of music playing in the background. And reflecting back, I think that was really one of my first profound experiences of the power of music and how it can help you tap into your heart and your soul and really reach a different level of expression and emotion. So that was one of those pivotal moments. Now, I ended up going to school for psychology.
Psychology, right? You mentioned that.
Yeah, my undergraduate, bachelor's degree in psychology, and I studied a lot of child development. I love that. I always had a gift for working with children. And so I thought, okay, this is great. I'll study psychology. And then as I went through the program, I realized, wow, okay, a bachelor's in psychology, it's really cool, but there's not too much you can do with it. You really need to kind of keep going with your education to open up some more doors. And so that's when I was studying. I was reaching out to all these schools and getting all these pamphlets about the programs they offered. And all of a sudden I got this pamphlet with this music therapy program. And I had never heard of music therapy. I was like, what's this? This sounds amazing. Because at the time I was very passionate about my music and I loved psychology. And I loved working with kids. And I thought, oh my gosh, wow, this could be the answer to what I'm looking for, because it combined all three of those interests. And the school was amazing. And I reached out to them and I started researching music therapy. And it was like, this is it. This is it, without a doubt. It's the only school I applied to.
What a natural integration for you of your interest in psychology, of your interest in working with kids, with your music. It just seemed to all come together in that moment from you when you saw that course.
It really did. It just synthesized everything that was really firing me up and making me passionate in that moment.
Was the course everything that you expected it to be? Because if it wasn't, then I'm sure you would have, kind of gone a different way. So.
It was so much more. It was really amazing. It was at this school that, as you mentioned, had this strong contemplative foundation. So a meditation practice was required, and we had to take meditation classes for all 3 years of the program, and even do a silent retreat and have our own meditation teachers and go through therapy ourselves. You had to have a therapist for at least a year, weekly therapy session, because they thought, listen, if you're going to be a therapist and you got your own baggage, which everyone does, if you don't work through that, well, guess what? It's going to limit how much you're going to be able to help others, whether you become a psychotherapist or whether you're working as a music therapist with a child with autism. You need to know your own baggage and have worked through that and have the tools to work through different challenges that come up, I believe, in order to be your best.
Was there a particular challenge that you found was the biggest hurdle for you to overcome in this process of becoming educated in working with children and in the music, in the psychology? Was there a bias maybe that you had, or a particular skill that you needed to develop, that you struggled with?
Oh, definitely. It was piano. I never really laid my fingers on a piano before. And all of a sudden, as I'm researching this program and talking to the director, she's like, you're going to need to be proficient in piano, guitar, and voice for the audition just to get into the program. And then at the end of the program, you have to take an official proficiency exam on guitar, piano, and voice. And if you don't pass that, you don't graduate. And it was like, oh my God, the pressure. So I immediately started taking piano lessons. I was so clumsy. It was so challenging. I had to continue studying and practicing all through the 3 years of grad school. And I squeaked by on the proficiency exam at the end. I squeaked by.
I didn't expect that answer at all. I didn't expect that answer at all. I thought it was going to be much deeper and prophetic. So can you explain to us what music therapy is?
Yeah, well, the way I like to present it is I like to build a picture in one's mind. So I ask you and your listeners to just close your eyes and picture a classroom, and there I am sitting on the floor, maybe one of those big carpet squares, and I've got my guitar, and there's a couple kids around me with some little maracas and shakers, and a child with autism is being led in the room by his para, and he's in his own world. He's kind of looking around. He might be stimming. Might be feeling a little anxiety around it, and as he walks towards the circle, he starts noticing the instruments and hearing the instruments. And he comes down and he's seated down, and I gently hand him an instrument and I encourage him to play it. And I start singing a hello song where we all take turns playing our instruments and waving hi or saying hi to our peers. And he just starts coming out of his shell a little bit. He starts engaging, he starts noticing his peers and watching them, and he starts waving a little bit to his peers, and he starts to play his instrument more. And as the session evolves, he just becomes more and more engaged and motivated by all the goals we're working on, since they're all being addressed in a fun musical way. Can you picture that?
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful example. You did not share that with me the last time we talked. So that was new, and that was really profound. Yes, it's a very vivid picture, and I can see that music is used as a tool almost there to help address some, in that case, a social maybe issues that a child might have, and understanding a vehicle that he might use in order to engage with his peers. Am I right in that perception? How would you describe that differently, or?
No, you nailed it. Definitely social skills is one of the goals I'm working on quite often. And it's just such a fun, beautiful way to work on a social skill, like saying hi to a peer or handing them an instrument or playing on a drum together, doing this joint attention, this creative process with another student where they come together and they're making music together. That's can be a pretty rare moment for some kids. And so there's the social skill element, but there's also the speech and communication. I might be singing a song that addresses a particular articulation goal, or stringing words together. And, I'll use that phrase or that word or that sound over and over in the song. And, because music is so repetitive by nature, repetitive but not monotonous, right, they get all this repetition without the monotony, and they're having fun. So, they're willing to push themselves a little further. And then we might do a motor development song where I'm singing and we're balancing on one foot and we're hopping and we're going up on our tiptoes, and I've even gotten down on the ground and done like Supermans for core strength, and we're walking like doing bear walks. And you could just incorporate all these amazing occupational and physical therapy goals into the music and have a lot of fun doing it.
So do you create a lot of this music individually for each child, depending on what it is when you talk about articulation being a goal, I don't imagine you have a whole folder of songs that relate to all different sounds. You might have some, but not all. So there must be occasions that come up when you need to develop some of these in order to meet the needs of a student, I would imagine. Is that
all the time? All the time. It's fun. That's one of the really fun parts of my job, is I get to personalize songs for my clients and the groups. And sure, there's certain songs that can be generalized and used with different clients or different groups, but I really enjoy tailor writing those songs to address very specific articulation goals or social skills or motor development, and even some academic and behavioral goals. Also doing musical social stories to address some behavioral and social skill development. That can be a really fun way to do that.
So these are all byproducts of using music as a tool, and as a tool for developing skills. They're not musical goals. You're not trying to teach the child to play the drums, but playing the drums might actually happen where they're able to carry on some rhythm. You're not teaching a child to use a castanet, or that isn't the focus of your time together. Your focus is trying to find a way to use that castanet or those drums to maybe promote eye contact, for example, or to build a child's self-esteem. Or these, some of the other ways that are non-musical. I mean, I could go on and on, but there are so many different aspects of non-musical goals that we have in working with children who have, so many different diagnoses. And would you say that music is applicable to almost all of these? Is there ever a time that it's not applicable?
Yeah, it is applicable to almost every goal area and every child and every special need. And as we had talked about before, over my 20 years of practicing and the thousands of children I've worked with, there has been only one. I think for a very intense auditory processing, auditory sensitivity issue, it just didn't work for him. And, I was like, gave it my best, tried, I think we had like 4 sessions, and then I met with the team and I'm just like, listen, let's not push this any further. I don't want to cause further anxiety around sound, music, or anything by like really pushing too hard on this. So that was the only time that it didn't work. And I think that's just a beautiful example because, it shows that it's not the perfect fit for everyone. But I would say 99.99% of kids are great fits for music therapy because most kids, almost every kid I know loves music. Almost every person, every human being I know loves music or at least likes music, right? So it's a great fit for almost anyone.
So just so our listeners understand or become more familiar with some of the different ways that you use music therapy, you've mentioned kinesthetic, coordination, developing motor skills. You talked about speech, that articulation, areas of articulation. I mentioned eye contact is another way. Earlier, you mentioned to me visual tracking, and also rhythm helps to organize, you said to me, the central nervous system. You talked to me about the hormones that are released during this joyful time of playing music.
Yes.
It permeates almost every area where a child may have difficulty if they're receptive to music. And depending upon the child's need, when you discuss with the team what your focus is, do you decide on particular instrument? Do you decide on how do you translate this information that you're given into an actual lesson plan for this child? How do you do that?
Well, it all starts with getting background information and doing an intake with the parent or perhaps even a teacher, usually with the parent, just talking about, okay, what instruments do they tend to gravitate towards? And what has been their background in music? Have they done music together, or kinder music, or have someone in the family that plays an instrument? So just really just getting that background information. What's their favorite song? What artists do they really like to listen to? And so you start getting, filling up your bucket of like ideas and tricks and songs and activities. And then of course, you're reading their IEP and you're getting an idea of globally what kind of goals they're working on and whether their objectives are, and you're just trying to figure out, okay, how can I be of most help to this child and to this team. It's a collaborative process. A lot of times I'm reaching out to the speech therapist and I'm saying, hey, what can I help you with? How can I back up what you're doing? Or to the occupational physical therapist, hey, this child's really responding really well to music and we're doing some movement. What particular gross motor movements are you addressing through goals and objectives? And I will support you in that. So I really love that collaborative process as well. And then, of course, there's the assessment. Once you start working with the child, you're assessing rhythm and singing and seeing what instruments they gravitate towards and, their level of attention and response to prompts.
Oh, yeah. I bet attention.
Yeah, the attention's huge.
Big thing. Yeah.
It's huge. And luckily, music just happens to draw in a child's attention so beautifully. I remember I went to this early intervention program. So, like 2 to 3 year olds. And one of the directors was like, oh, I was going to do like a little sample session, a little sample group session. And they're like, oh, so how long do you plan to do the session for? And I said, between 30 and 45 minutes, probably more like 45 minutes. And they're like, what? You might be able to get them for like 10 or 15 minutes, but just so you know. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going for 45 minutes, but obviously I'm not going to push it. Those kids were so into it. It was so wonderful to see them hanging in there and enjoying it and it not feeling like too long or dragged out. It was really special, a special moment.
Do you present the kids with a bunch of instruments and they kind of gravitate toward the one they want for the session? Or do you decide ahead of time, okay, I'm bringing the drum today, or I'm bringing
Yeah, I have a bag of instruments that I bring into almost every session. I typically have my guitar and I'll have a couple different types of drums and some shakers and maracas and some really fun like Latin American instruments that have these really strong sensory components to it, like a cabasa or a cocorico. There's some really fun ones. And little finger pianos and little lap harps and boom whackers. Wow. Those are amazing. These like tuned tubes that they're colored and they're numbered and lettered. And as you hit each one, I'll play some boom whackers for you so y'all can hear what I'm talking about. As I'm just going to hit them up against my knee, and each one is tuned to a different note. It's this really fun way.
They look like a plastic hollow tube. One was about 12 inches long, one was about 10 inches long, and when you bang them, because of the length, they produce a different sound.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Exactly.
Boom whackers. Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Ryan, being a behavior remediation coach, I know that in working with the kids that I work with, one of the hardest things to do is to develop that relationship with the child, that trust relationship where they're actually comfortable in doing what you ask them to do. In my case, talking to me about the things that I want to discuss with them. Do you have that as a goal in your work with your students? And if so, how do you develop that? How does music fit into developing that therapeutic relationship?
Yeah, that's the foundation of my work. I mean, it's not a written goal. I never write like, this child will trust me. 4 out of 5 opportunities. I don't know how I'm going to measure that one, but come up with something. So it's not a quantitative goal, but is the foundation for all the goals. Without that trust and without that relationship, good luck working on all these challenging goals that pushes the child's limits. Most kids don't want to push up against their limits. Most human beings don't want to push up against their limits. Right. So you better have that trust and that relationship and that respect in order to go there. And the beautiful thing about music is the music creates that bond. If anyone's ever played in a band with someone, or if anyone's ever sang in a choir with someone, sure, there's moments where you might be a little out of sync and you're not really feeling the flow, right? But then there's those moments of flow where everyone comes together in this harmonious moment of connectivity that's really amazing. And that happens so often. As music therapists, we're trained to assist that in happening. If I'm working with a child with autism who's rocking back and forth, I'm going to match my playing to the rhythm of their rock.
Oh,
And I'm going to sing
that is,
about them. I'm going to use their name. I'm going to sing about them. And I'm going to connect with them in a really deep level that tells them, I see you. I respect you. I'm not telling you to stop. In fact, I'm joining you musically into your own inherent rhythm and behavior. And
that
it's
is
almost
really
like
cool.
That's
That
pretty
is,
cool, huh?
yeah, that is really cool. What a great example of um, an expression of your desire to connect with them. Wow, I really like that. Is any child too young to work with you?
No, during my internship, I was doing my internship at a pediatric rehabilitation unit at a hospital, and there was this one client of mine, 8 months old. Oh, she was a sweet little baby with Down syndrome.
8 months.
8 months.
What
And
could be
she, well, right, you're like, what could the goal be, right?
Yes, right.
Well, she was not cooing or babbling or vocalizing. And so they brought me in as this, young green intern, but very enthusiastic and motivated, inspired, and passionate, and to try to help motivate this little 8-month-old girl to vocalize and to coo and babble. And so I'd be playing music to her, and then I'd like suddenly stop in the middle of a phrase. She would make a little sound, and I'd figure out, oh, what pitch is that? What note is she making that sound on? And then I'd change the key of the song I was playing in to match and support her sound and her pitch, her natural pitch. And it would be this call and response where I'd kind of repeat what she said, like, ooh, and then she would do it and I would do it. It would just kind of go back and forth. And it really led to a lot of growth and development with her vocalizing.
Okay, so I need to ask, what were the challenges for you in this process of encouraging her to speak, and how did you know what to pick up on, perhaps, and what to let go? Maybe not to push too hard in a particular area. How that's not musical. That's more your innate sense of your therapy, your psychology, I mean, every sound, every movement, every eye contact. Did you focus on a particular sound that you tried to get her to develop? Or did you just focus on, did you reward her every time she verbalized? How do you, with an 8-month-old, I mean, you can't go, oh, wonderful, you did a great. How do you encourage that?
Oh, the music is the reward. That's the amazing thing. Okay. It's like I pause, she makes a sound, I start strumming the guitar and singing back to her, and boom, there's the reinforcement. It's just built in. It's inherent in the modality.
Wow, just the music itself is the reward. That's it.
Just the music itself. Yeah. And that's why one of our biggest allies and tools as a music therapist is silence. We use silence all the time. We are constantly just stopping songs, like in the middle or right before a word or right before a phrase or right before a child's supposed to hit an instrument. And as soon as they hit that instrument, as soon as they jump up with both feet, if we're working on a motor goal, as soon as they say that phrase or make that sound, bam, the music immediately starts again. And they get this rush of oxytocin that's being released from their brain. That's that kind of bonding, cuddling hormone that's released when you're engaged in musical activity with someone. And there's the reinforcement right there.
So that's kind of, I guess, what you've answered my question. I didn't expect that answer, but you've answered my question. So it's not really that you are looking for the child, for a particular response from the child or a particular movement, or you're looking for any response to the music, and the music itself is a reward for that, for any response that you get, to encourage them to continue to respond. And I would assume that it's almost any age.
Yeah, any age. And I would say that there are very targeted goals in there.
Okay.
Sometimes it might be any response. When I'm just meeting a client for the first time, I'm not gonna like dive heavy right into their quantitative goals, right?
Right.
I'm working on the bonding, I'm working on the relationship. And so I will respond to body movement or any sound they make. And I'm less trying to prompt them and get specific things out of them than just following their lead. And then once we develop that relationship, that's when the song will be very specific towards a certain thing, or the prompt will be, Johnny's gonna hit the drum, big pause, boom, good job, Johnny, good. And I'll sing good job, but again, it's the music. I could just probably play the guitar right then and there. That would be enough reinforcement. But I think it is beautiful to sing someone's name and to sing your praise as opposed to just saying it. Judith, when's the last time someone sang your name to you while gazing into your eyes?
You just made me think of something. This 8-month-old was nonverbal.
Yeah.
And I imagine you work with children of all ages that are nonverbal.
Yes.
And so your method or methodology of getting them to engage, regardless of age, is pretty much the same working with someone who's nonverbal, whether they're 8 months old or 13 years old.
Definitely.
You're not, I don't know why that just clicked in, but it wasn't the 8-month-old intrigued me because I wasn't sure how you would work with an 8-month-old. And yet it suddenly occurred to me that isn't the issue. It's the child that is nonverbal. That's the issue. And the way you just explained it is interesting, that music is its own reward. That's very interesting. You've talked about some of the information you develop in order to plan your sessions with these kids, and you've talked about your intake and so forth. Are there any considerations that you have with students that a red flag may go up during your process of your due diligence, where you feel that your approach might not be applicable? Or would you say that you haven't found that yet, really? Music seems to kind of apply to almost everyone you've worked with, except that one example. I'm sure there were challenges along the way, but any particular obstacles that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I would say yes. In general, I think music works for almost any child. And you do have to use that sensitivity as a therapist to assess what auditory sensitivities to music or instruments they may have. They might not like the sound of a tambourine. That might be grating on their ears. They may prefer something more gentle, like a rain stick.
Okay.
And I feel like you really need to be mindful of different tones and timbres and instrument sounds when you're working with a child, to make sure that you're being respectful of their own auditory processing.
I think this would be a good place for you to share with us an original piece that I know you are prepared to share. And before we do that, maybe you can set up why you felt the need to develop this piece, when you use it, how it's appropriate, and then afterwards we'll talk a little bit about how it translates with some of the kids.
For sure. So I'm actually going to share a piece that I wrote for my own son when he was struggling with some social skills as a preschooler, and using my knowledge of music therapy and child development and social skills and social stories in particular, I thought, oh, wow, well, if I'm doing this with my clients, I should try it with my own son.
Right.
And so the process basically with social stories is to just create a simple narrative where you have many descriptive statements. And then you might have a prescriptive statements. You don't want too many of the prescriptive statements. You want some basic, like, when I go to school, I always see my friends, and when I see them playing with the toys. And then you might want to have a prescriptive statement. So social stories have been shown to be really powerful. But as a music therapist, I feel like I can take it to a whole other level by making it musical. And so I use an app called Story Creator, which allows you to take pictures and videos and almost make like a digital book. So you open up the book and you can record your voice and singing into it, and there's an image, and then the music plays, and then you can turn the page and the next one goes. So it's this beautiful social story that has musical elements, has verbal elements, and it has the visual elements. And usually when I'm working with a child in my music therapy practice, with consent, of course, I don't share any of this stuff, I will take pictures of them doing the correct behavior and making sure they see themselves succeeding in what the goal of the social skill is. And I'll record their own voice, and I'll even do a little video that might happen at the end when we get to the last page, a little video pops up. So it's a really cool multimedia way to have a lot of fun and address these goals. So this was a social story called Make Another Choice, because frequently my boy would be going up to other peers in his preschool and, typical kid stuff, just grabbing something. But he was behind. That he should have left that behind about a year prior. He was still kind of stuck there. So that's why I decided to do this. And then every day going to school, we'd watch and review it. And just that daily repetition, and he was so motivated by it. It was really cute. So enough of the background. Let's go to Make Another Choice. If someone has what I want, a truck or a fun toy, I'll try to make a different choice from the other toys. I'll find something else that no one else has, like a car, like a plane, or even a toy train that will make us all happy. Smile and say, yippee! And that was a little video at the end.
Oh, that is so cute. That is so
fun.
Cute. Are we gonna have a link to that so that people can go and, is that?
I don't actually have a link to that, but I do have a link of another social story I did. Again, that's anonymous, so I can share it.
Right.
So the link will be there for another one of my musical social stories. And I also have articles that I've linked to that kind of walk you through the process of writing them. And, you just take a simple melody. That was just Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And you just add your own words. It's pretty simple. Some people get a little intimidated by trying to do something musical like that. But if you just keep it simple and basic, we're not writing a symphony here. We're just creating a simple musical hook to pull in the child's attention and make them motivated to listen and learn.
Parents can use almost anything in the house to make an instrument. I mean, you can take out pots and pans and a wooden spoon, or two wooden spoons, and make an instrument. And I was talking to a parent the other day who was saying that her child kept doing something that she had asked him not to do. He's 5, and whenever she would say to him, Sammy, I want you to, we've talked about this before, I don't want you to do that. And his answer was always, I forgot. So I said to her, make it into a song.
There you go.
Make it into a song. and I haven't heard back from her, but I haven't heard any complaining about Sammy still doing it either. So
That's nice.
I'm assuming that it worked. I wanted to get in touch with her before we did the recording, but this is something parents can do at home. Just a simple, I don't want you to slam the door.
Close it so lightly.
Right. And I'll tell you a quick story. One of my sons, he's a father now with children of his own, but when he was at school, he had difficulty in visualizing anything that was written, any written communication. And so that translated into spelling words. He couldn't remember how to write the words that he needed to write for his spelling test. When he wrote things in class, it wasn't hard because he could get it off the board or we could look in the book. But when he had to do a spelling word list, he couldn't remember it. One of the words was encyclopedia. Now, you're probably not old enough to remember Jiminy Cricket.
Oh, yeah. I like Jiminy Cricket.
And one of the words that he used to spell was encyclopedia, ENCYCLOPEDIA.
Nice.
And so, and telephone numbers.
Yeah.
My son couldn't remember telephone numbers. So we used to put them to music. Yeah. To this day, he can give us the phone number of the house we used to own at the Cape because it was to music.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not sure whether some children have more of a musical inclination than others, but clearly it is an effective way to get children to be metacognitive, perhaps, about their thinking and their behavior. Is there research that supports that?
Yes, there is research that supports the use of music to address academic and behavioral. Well, in academic and safety. I feel like that's kind of what we're talking about. Okay, if you put someone's phone number, just say it over and over and over again, as opposed to singing it over and over again,
safety.
Which one is more effective?
Right.
And that's why, we learned our ABCs, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, through music and so many other things. Now, I feel like it's such a powerful tool, and it is used mostly just kind of at the preschool level. And certainly, I've worked on some very strong academic goals with a child with Williams syndrome, and he was just learning so many great things. And as you get into more complex things, like more complex math, it gets a little trickier. I feel like it's really easy to use with basic stuff like a phone number or your ABCs or some, counting by fives or counting by twos, things like that, names of places, geography. But as you get into more complex academics, it gets a little bit trickier, of course. But yeah, it's really effective, and I think it should be used more.
Some of the mnemonics that we give the kids to remember, for example, the process of math when they get into high school. Please, I'm trying to remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, to tell you to do parentheses first and exponents. And now some of the kids used those mnemonics and they did very well with them, but I'm wondering if maybe putting things like that to music would help kids who are more rhythmic remember that process. Does research show that that's the case?
Well, it's so smart because it addresses different parts of the brain simultaneously. I feel like it plays on children's strengths, children's individual strengths. If one of their strengths is rhythm and you put something to music, well, it's going to help them remember. If maybe their strength is more melodic, well, that will help them as well. So I feel like because music is processed simultaneously in different parts of the brain, it can be a really great gateway to learning those types of things and memorizing.
Is there any research that supports the neurological development of connections or developing right or left brain? Does music help that in a verifiable way? Is there a
Yeah,
way?
there's a lot of, I would probably say the best place to go for research studies in music therapy is musictherapy.org. That's our American Music Therapy Association's website. So musictherapy.org has all these different, music for autism and music for school-age children and music for Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's.
Oh, right.
They have these great collections of research studies there that address some of the things that you're talking about now. I don't know if there's a very specific study geared towards that, but I would assume there is, since it's such a foundational concept and it's so easy to address with music, and obviously the anecdotal evidence is there to support a study. So I would be really surprised if it's not, but I would encourage anyone interested in any of the research to check out musictherapy.org.
Okay. All right. I know that's not on the list you gave me, so I'm glad you mentioned that. Can you spend a little bit, or will you spend a little bit of time talking about what some of the services are that you do? You've alluded to some of them, but how might parents take advantage of some of the services that you provide, perhaps online?
Yes, well, we are adapting, of course, and doing telemusic therapy using telehealth platforms, and I've been so pleasantly surprised at how successful it's been. Of course, I've had a client who just didn't take well to it. It was, for whatever reason, it just wasn't working for him. So again, we did a few sessions and we said, listen, let's push the pause button.
Yeah.
The vast majority of my clients, individually and even groups, the response has been so amazing. And sometimes it's the only thing that's working. I've gotten so many emails from special ed directors saying, listen, can we double up? Can we do like 2 sessions per week? Because this is really what's working. And this is what's not only helping them address goals, but it's what's bringing a little bit of joy into their life. So, at the same time we're addressing these therapeutic goals, we're addressing quality of life and self-esteem, and just bringing a little joy and happiness into the child's life while they're mostly stuck at home. So, but I only offer telehealth in New Hampshire.
All right, that's what I was
New
going
Hampshire residents. You can't really go cross-border too much because of different state regulations.
Okay.
But certainly there's amazing music therapists in almost every state, and everyone's doing the telehealth model now. So I think finding a music therapist in musictherapy.org, there's a music therapist finder button. So you can type in your, I think you type in your zip code or your state, and I'll give you a list of music therapists in that area and what they specialize in. But I do have online resources too at therhythmtree.com, especially on my store page. I've got, a music to address social skills, fun little video course.
Oh, great.
I have a digital version of this DVD I put out of all these fun songs addressing different, speech communication, social skills, motor skill development. And it comes with the DVD and the CD and the songbook. So that's really fun too. And there's some other fun things on the store page too, but on my about page, therhythmtree.com/about, I just have a ton of articles I've written too, which give parents some great ideas. It's all free. So if parents want to peruse through my about page, there's a whole list of articles and even some fun infographics and things like that. So you can get a lot of great ideas by doing that. And I've got a newsletter, which is really fun because when you sign up, you get this automatic series of videos, about 10 of them. So, spread out every week and a half, you get a new one, and each video shares a really awesome, effective strategy for addressing goals with children with special needs. So I would just encourage people to go to my website, sign up for my newsletter. You'll get some good.
And say the name of your website again.
Therhythmtree.com.
Therhythmtree.com.
And rhythm is a tricky word to spell, so look in the show notes and just click on the link.
I was going to say we'll have that posted as well, but I want people to be aware of the name of it. And we're going to have many of the other resources that Ryan has alluded to will also be posted up there. And if you have any questions, I hope our listeners will get in touch with Ryan. I know he'd be very happy to answer any of your questions if you're out of his area. And and give you some guidance or direction if you think that his services or the kinds of services that he provides might be applicable for your child. Ryan might be able to give you some direction in making some decisions as to where to go to get those services.
Oh, okay. And I just remembered, didn't I sent you a coupon code, yeah? For your listeners.
You may have. I'm not sure. I don't have the list in front of me.
If it's not on there now, I'm pretty sure I did a 20% off coupon code, but if it's not on there, let me know. I'll set that up today so everyone can have access to that.
All right. I've got that written down. Ryan, I want to thank you so much for this. Has been one of the more fun talks I've been able to do, and certainly talking with you earlier was a delight. It was very exciting to hear what you're doing and all of the children whose lives you're touching with this music. Music is a universal language, and it doesn't make any difference whether children are articulate or just simply verbal, or whether they're nonverbal. They don't have to have any of those things in order to be able to share what you're sharing with them. And that's just wonderful. Thank you very much for giving us so much of your time.
It's an honor.
Thank you, mentors, for joining us at Mentorships in Education. I hope you will continue to keep in touch with me. Many of the guests that we have had have been because you have suggested them. The topics that we have continued to peruse, explore, have been in several cases because people have asked us to do a little more exploration in those areas. So I hope that you will continue to keep in touch with us. I hope you are all well. Stay safe, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, mentors, for being with us today. If you found this podcast of value, please visit justeducationfirst.com to subscribe to our blog and Mentorship and Education podcast so that you may continue the exploration with us. Our goal is to provide a free treasury of information for our listeners, so they can become acquainted with the amazing resources that we have available to us. We want to thank all of our guests for giving their time and sharing their wealth of information with us. Please also visit their websites and explore more of their resources to further your pursuit of the topic. Hope to hear from you at justeducationfirst.com. Have a good week, and thank you.